dropping out of story. Dropping out of story. The story in our head is related to the movie that we see. Whenever things don't have meaning, we place meaning on things, right? And if you notice, when we check in the space, what do? We practice noticing the space around us. We practice noticing physical sensations on or in our body. We practice noticing and labeling our emotional state, right? But while we do that, while we move through these 3 stages, we go from out here to in here to our emotional body. Well, when we notice things, you'll notice that as we notice it, it's almost like we automatically attach a story to everything. Like I can notice this picture on the wall, and without even saying anything else about it, there's a story in my head about this piece of artwork on the wall. And the story of when Anna, my fiance, made it in our living room during the pandemic, and how I had to step over it every single day. So notice how there's the object, and then there's a context about the story about that object. And so what we're practicing is getting out of the story in our head and getting into our body. But what we do is first we notice things in our life, things that have resonance or they're sensational, right? And when that sensation hits our body, we hold on to it, right? And this might be something that's really fantastic or amazing, and so we remember it. Or maybe it's something that's really challenging and traumatic and hurtful, and so we hold on to that. So what you're doing is you're practicing getting out of the story in your head about it, which is placing our awareness on the people or the objects out there, and we're practicing getting into the context, bringing it into the space, sharing that with the men in the space so that they can join into that with us. But then while we're working with it, noticing what our present experience is on or in our body. And this will bring us into a flow state, okay? This is done in the moment because we're working with a past experience in the present, right? So there's a thought object or a context or a story about something, and then there's my present experience of what is emotionally happening on or in my body. And that's what the men in this space are there to help us with. So when we talk about dropping out of the story, it's not that you can't tell a story, but we want to notice when we're telling a story. We want to do our best to get out of the story in our head and into the present with what we're working with in the present in relationship to that story in our head or that thought object, right? Because we're not actually working with that person that hurt us right now. We're working with the idea of that person and our relationship with that idea in our body in the present right now. So while I'm here, that's why the men in the space are there to ask you, what are you feeling? Where do you feel it in your body? And what do you need? But we'll get into that later. For now, moving through the fundamentals training, all you have to do is show up and practice being open. Practice getting vulnerable and move through this process one step at a time. You'll learn it as you go. I'll see you in group.